So there we go. Let me share my screen and we should all be good. Now, I didn't prep any slides. I just wanted to walk you through some demos. So it's going to be demo heavy. I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago that my friend Tommy actually did a session on showing the dashboard who was active in Microsoft Teams. And it all started with us discussing, okay, you have people working in teams, and if they are working in teams, is there a way to actually see what they are doing and adding points to that? So give them, let's say, an activity bonus or things they're doing. Now, if you would go to Teams, what you typically do on Teams is you create files or you have chat messages, you're chatting, having meetings, stuff like that. Now, envision a way where you could actually hand out points or identify who is active. Now, with that, let's say, challenge, I started looking at CLI to see what we could do with the CLI. And it turns out there are already quite a few things in the CLI that you can either abuse or actually use to generate reports like that. Now, out of the box in your tenant, there are some reports available for you that you can use to get some insights into your activity. Now, you can actually read those reports using the CLI. So if you install the CLI, let me quickly show you. If you go to pnp.github.io/CLI Microsoft 365, you actually get an overview of all the things you can do. I already installed everything, not going to spend time on that. But if you have the CLI installed and you are logged in, you can actually talk to your tenant. And what I can do is I can say M365, SharePoint Online, report, and I'm going to say activity, that's always hard, user detail. You have to specify a period, and then I can say, okay, give me the last 7 days of things that are happening on my tenant around SharePoint Online. So what I get is I get an overview, and as you can see, I get 2 entities because I have 2 demo accounts on my environment, and I can see some details like last activity date. I can see synced files, shared internally files. I can do things like external file count. And I have pretty much the same account if I want to do things around Teams. So I can do the Teams report, user activity, user details. Sorry, I have to specify a period as well. So I'm going to do minus D7 instead of an ampersand. That's better. And that would return a somewhat similar JSON structure with only different properties. So instead of files, I now get private chat messages, Teams chat messages. So that's all stuff that I already get out of the box. Now imagine that I have a report like this and I wanted to do anything with it. So I want to actually report based on this information. Now what you can do with the CLI is you can actually send adaptive cards. And when you want to send adaptive cards, you need to design an adaptive card. So you do need to do some things with an adaptive card designer. But once you have that in place, you can actually send those adaptive cards to Teams. And in order to send them to Teams, you need a webhook. I'm going to show you in a second. But there was this really nice write-up by Louise. She did a how to send adaptive cards with CLI for Microsoft 365, which is basically all the things that we need. It's creating a webhook, making sure that we have some adaptive card JSON that we can actually send, add some data to that adaptive card, and then send it to your teams. Now, if I go to the designer, there is this really cool website where you have a designer that you can use to design your adaptive card, making sure that it looks pretty. There are some samples out there that you can abuse as well. Now, in my case, I just went with a really simple setup, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to get some details. So I wanted to get that report that we just saw. I wanted to map that to a specific adaptive card. And then I wanted to make sure that I can actually send it. Now, what I did is I'm going to paste it in here as well. So the first thing that I'll need a webhook URL. I already created that. So for the sake of time, I'm gonna skip that. Then what I needed to do is I'll need to get that report, and actually I need to do something with that report. I wanted to, with that report, as you can imagine, Here we go. Let me get the Teams one. With that report, I want to do something with some of the properties. So let's say I want to get the private chat message count and use that as the most used property. So I'll need to sort this result set, and I want to sort it on either the Teams chat message count or something else. So it depends on what you want to sort on, but if you would want to sort in Teams on the Teams chat message count, it will look like this. I'm going to open my code. It's going to be easier. Let me get this out of the way. So what I'll need to do is I'll need to get that Teams report user activity details, need to specify a period. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass in a query where I'm going to say, OK, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to sort by the Teams chat message count. And then I'm going to reverse it so that I at least get the most sent, or the user that sent the most Teams chat messages. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the top 3 of that. And I'm going to do the user principal name, and I'm going to convert that from JSON. Then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to use that CLI command called M365 adaptive card send. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to send I'm going to send that to a URL, a webhook URL, and I'm actually going to send that card. Now, if I would send this is going to be the top 3 SharePoint based on file interactions. Now, I'm not sure if I did a lot of things on my tenant, but what I can do. Oops, there is a typo in there as well. Let me get what the typo is. It's the convert from JSON. There should be a space in there, or there should be an enter in there. Ooh, this should be better. Let me do this. Now, what this will do is they will retrieve the data, and then it will send it. There is a question: what permissions are needed to get this report data? It's using the out-of-the-box report data that is available. So you'll need, I think, to be a SharePoint administrator if you're getting the SharePoint reports. If you do the Teams reports, you need to be a Teams administrator. If you're a global admin, you can see anything. By default, currently, it will filter out the user display or the UPNs. So there is this checkbox to anonymize the reports. If you want to use this approach, and you want to get identifiable data, you'll need to actually disable that. Otherwise, it won't show. But with this, what we now did is, OK, we sent the SharePoint weekly social champions, meaning that I at least get some insights. Now, what you can also do, and that's a bit more of a complex one, you could actually go through all the data in a team and then use a custom scoring model. So it's pretty much the same approach. We're going to rank people in a team for what they're doing. Now, I'm gonna ignore this one. So what I do is I get all my teams, get some details. Then for each team, I'm gonna process that team, and I'm gonna say, okay, I need all the team details, and I'll need wrong one. I'll need this one. So what I need to do is I'll need to get a specific team. I'm not gonna process all teams. I want to get one specific team. Then I'm gonna say, okay, how long am I going to look back? Do I need to get champions for the last year or for the last 50 days or the last 7 days? So you can run this report periodically. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get all the channels for that specific team. Then for each channel, I'm going to get all the messages, because you need all messages to actually get details from. And then that's where it gets interesting. If you retrieve all the messages, you also need to get some message details. I'm going to show you later. But the first thing that we're going to do is for each message, I'm going to say, OK, if the message was created by a user instead of a chatbot or a backend service, then I'm going to do something. So if I do have a user ID, which is only filled if you're actually a real user who logged in and did something, then I'm going to do something. So I'm going to set the type to post. I'm going to say, OK, there were details with the reaction type, what was the user that did something, and I'm going to specify whether there was a subject, because I think any post in a Teams channel should have a subject. Then for each reaction, which is all the likes and comments, I'm going to add that to my results as well. Then finally, I'm going to get all the replies for each message, and I'm going to add those as well, because a reply should count as well. Then running that, you will have all messages, all replies, all likes and comments, and all likes on all comments that you would have. Now, with that data, you can then say, oh, let me get some user details, and then I'm going to say I'm going to create my own scoring model. And this scoring model is slightly, let's say, slightly simplistic. We're only going to say we are getting, or we counting, or we are valuing your post. Now, you would say, okay, a post counts for 2 points, a subject counts for an additional point, your reply counts for an additional count, your reaction only counts for a half a point. So it's not something that you count or score really high, but with that, what you can then do is, if you would run this will actually post somewhat a similar result, and it will tell me, okay, who are the most active users in this specific team. Now, Steve, you're totally right. If you want to run this against all teams in your environment, then it could potentially become fairly slow. So what you could do is you could get this information, and you could add some additional logic. You could see if a team has any activity in the last week, and if not process it. If it does have activity, then you can get some details. Now, running this, it's already done, means that I can now see, oh, apparently I and someone else did something in this specific team. I sent some messages and I actually replied that. Now, this is all running from my local machine. It's all running in my PowerShell window, or my terminal, actually. You could also run this in a logic app. So you could have a logic app, and quickly show you that here. You could have a logic app where you could create a container, so an Azure container. Within the Azure container, you can get the CLI running. There is a Docker container available for the CLI. You would need to set up a managed identity, but given time, no time for that. And that would be my demo. Concluded results. Imagine this kind of thing in M language in Power BI. Yeah, it would really cool to get this data to, let's say, Teams Dataverse and query Power BI against that. Definitely a good scenario.
Awesome. Thank you, Appy. This is really, really cool stuff. Is there anything the CLI cannot do? Eventually, we're going to be applying for jobs, and they're going to say, no, thanks. We've got the CLI for Microsoft 365.
We can do anything. If you want to help out, there are a lot of good first issues to see, and get your badge for that as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. Awesome.